Josiah Lopez says, "Why would I have low energy on the first day? Fruit juice and honey only."
It could just be that it's new. Could definitely be that it's new. You are like, for me, it wasn't like, oh, I had, some fruit and then all of a sudden I was like, I'm going to go train. So let's kind of break that down a little bit. The motivation to train and the motivation to go and like do things that require energy, you're not going to be like out of your seat crazy and excited for those things unless you're well recovered from your workouts. So if you start to beat the shit out of yourself with your workouts, no matter what diet you're on, you will have a decline in motivation of doing that same thing. Um, think about, think about discipline for like a child. Child runs out in the street and you swat him on the butt. Like, you don't want to smack. I did that to both my kids. You don't want to hit your kid. Like, I don't want to hit my kid. I've never hit either one of them in the sense of like, what someone would consider like hitting a child. I viewed it as discipline, a swat on the butt, so they know not to do that anymore. And in this case, it's like, if you're beating the shit out of yourself at the gym, your body knows, like, don't go walk into that damn gym today. You keep abusing yourself every time you go in there or when you run, right? Why don't you want to run? And I tell people all the time, if you don't want to run, don't fucking run. If you don't want to go to the gym, don't go. It's different. Like what I was talking about earlier is a little different about you deciding, oh, am I going to go home and eat and smooch my wife? Or am I going to go train? Like, go train. Don't be a pussy, right? But when you're beating the hell out of yourself with your training sessions all the time, and your back's all twisted up and your knee kind of hurts and you're just kicking your own ass too much, that's a time to just not go. That's a time to just settle into something slightly different. Think about, hopping on a walk or something like that. Energy can really vary for people depending on the food they eat and depending on food timing and all these different factors. But you got to kind of view it like this. Sugar and this diet is pretty new for a lot of people. These simple sugars, especially, I would say that, yeah, the simple sugars are probably pretty new for people. So you might need to just give it a minute. You mentioned it's your first day. I've had people tell me like day 2, day 3 was like real bad. Day 1 was good. I've had people tell me the opposite and so on. So you got to give this thing some space. And then also how much carbohydrate did you have? That's something to consider, because if let's say that you've been low carb for a while and 200 grams of carbs in a day is kind of on the higher end for you. You typically been having like 100 grams of carbs in a day. And you've been having complex carbohydrates, which are slower digestion. Slower digesting. There we go. They take longer to digest, right? Those are going to bump up your blood sugar, and your blood sugar is going to, but it's only going to go so high, and it's going to come down, fairly slowly. It's not going to get too crazy of a bump, right? But if you're, blasting some of these sugars sometimes, kind of depending on what they are, the fructose is a little different because it goes to the liver. It doesn't go into the bloodstream and disrupt your glucose as much, is my understanding of it. Your energy could kind of be all over the place because previously you're only used to like 100 grams of carbs in a day, and now you just shot 150 grams of carbohydrates in one one smoothie or one fruit bowl with honey and sugar on it, that kind of stuff. So just pay attention to that. Like before you go and do a workout, maybe have like a glass or like a little bottle of like apple juice or something. Those like little tiny kid ones, like those little tiny apple juice, like have something like that, and just see how your body kind of responds to that. And then you can kind of continue onward from there. But if you are like making a fruit bowl and then you're like hitting some honey with a spoon and you're like, doing all these other things, the amount of sugar you just consume could be astronomical and can make you feel lethargic. I actually felt a little lethargic when I got here today because I had that other smoothie. I didn't need it, but I just wanted it. And so I had it. And then so I went into the gym and did like 3 sets of back work. And then boom, it just kind of set me in a different direction. So the same rules always apply. Whenever you lack energy, go make some, go produce some, go for a walk or get some training in.
Samuel Kamen says, if the purpose of the sugar diet is to boost metabolism, wouldn't eating majority fruits just make it similar to caloric restriction? Most people are going to struggle to eat 2,000 calories of fruits.
It can. Yeah, I mean, there's a good conjecture against it. Yeah, it can. The idea isn't to like, intentionally blast calories through the roof. However, it does appear that when you eat this way, so here's the important thing to consider. FGF21 and some of the things that we're looking for, they come more so from the absence of protein than anything else. So that's rule number 1. Number 2 is it seems like the FGF21 production, according to Joe English and now verified by Amplified Vitality, and hopefully how other people talk about it as well. I think Anabology gave his stamp of approval on that as well. FGF21 can also be heightened by fructose, and the metabolism can get sparked by fructose. I think that's actually fairly well known. And we'll have to have other experts continue to communicate about that, because I don't want to just, spew out information that's cherry picked from only certain studies and all that different kind of stuff. Nick Norwitz is another person that, he reviewed the literature, like check out his YouTube channel. And he went over it pretty thoroughly. Jay Feldman, another one. So like this stuff is like, it's kind of cool, because I think initially people thought like, oh, this is Mark, he's fucking meathead. He always has these weird ideas. I think people thought the Slingshot was a weird idea. People thought the Hip Circle was a weird idea. People thought the different products I made, the Steak Shake, that people thought was like a disgusting sounding name, or that sounds gross. You're going to put liver and kidney, heart and spleen, pancreas into a protein powder, like sounds gross, but we found a way to make it awesome. And I always find a way to change people's mind. I think at first they're like, huh. And then later on, they're like, oh. And that's what I'm seeing, like some of my friends hitting me up about this, having, a lot of conversations about this in the background with people that I care about and people that are friends. Mark Lobliner, Mike Dolce, who was supposed to be on the podcast today, but he's scared. Mike Dolce, for those of you guys don't know, he's this little pencil neck guy, and he's always talking trash. And he got very nervous, got wet feet today, and he couldn't make it on the show because he knows that sugar fasting is superior to anything that he's ever come up with. I'm actually 100,000% kidding. Mike Dolce is a badass. His neck is probably bigger than my thighs. He's a legend. And also, he worked with the UFC. He made diets and workout routines for the UFC. Mike has worked with so many professional fighters and professional athletes and CEOs and regular folks and stuff like that. He's helped a lot of people lose weight. And Mike has a great approach. And I'm so excited to talk to him, because I think initially he was 100% against the sugar diet, and he might be still against it, because Mike does not like fad stuff. And we'll talk about it more. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I've had him on the show before and we spoke about these things. He wants what everybody else wants, though. He wants solutions, right? So like, I don't think he cares that much if you do keto and you enjoy it. I don't think he cares that much if you do carnivore and you enjoy it and your blood markers are healthy and you're at a good body weight. I don't think he cares. But what I think he wants to try to communicate with people is like, yo, listen, you can eat all this stuff. You can have dairy. You can have starches. What Cole and I are sharing right now is like this temporary vacation from some stuff, temporary vacation from some starches and things like that. We're not saying not to ever eat starches again. We're trying to get your metabolism tuned in to a point where you can have starches often and not have it be detrimental. But Mike's found success, and go ahead and look into his diet, into his protocols. He has books and ebooks, and he's got all kinds of stuff available. He's more of a balanced diet guy. And, additionally, what's weird about him is that he's not a calorie guy. He doesn't love the idea of sitting there counting calories because he understands what I found out long ago as well. And that's the idea of choices. Your choices with your food are the most critical. For some people, they're not allowed to have too many choices, because if we give people too many choices, sometimes all hell breaks loose. And so sometimes boxed ideas are the best. This is the best way to teach children. This is the best way to do just about anything. Boxed ideas, boxed principles. If you tell a child what to do, that's one thing, right? When they're 5, it's like they might need to be told what to do or what not to do. But when they're 7, when they're 9, when they're 11, it's better to give them a box, like this little New Brew box I got right here. Give them a box, and within that box, when they open it, they'll see the various ideas that are inside that box. And all those ideas are coming from you. So you're still helping them lean towards the correct choices, right? But it's boxed ideas, boxed concept. And now they think that it's their idea to do that. Sometimes when it comes to nutrition, people need boxed ideas. They need to literally be, people say think outside the box. Well, we need to learn about what's inside the box first before we ever try to really go too far outside of it. Even though sugar diet or sugar fasting might be outside the box, thinking of traditional nutrition. And so I might need to box you in and say, hey, only eat those 6 foods. Only have sugar, honey, maple syrup, fruit juice, and candy. And candy might even need to be outside the box because it might not even, you know what I mean? Like might not serve us for what we're trying to do. And maybe the same is true with maple syrup or honey. Maybe you go pouring way too much of it on there. So the main basis of this diet is not to blast yourself into like 4,000, 5,000 calorie a day diet, because even according to the literature, that wouldn't hold up anyway if you're somebody that can consume like 2,000 calories a day. To go double over your metabolic rate is not smart. That's not a good idea. It can be done, and you can play with it for a while. And I've found some people eating 4,500 calories and another guy eating 6,000 calories, and they were able to make that work, but they also increased their calories by like 100 for like weeks on end until they got to some of those numbers. So that took a lot of patience, a lot of time, and a lot of like research, right? Like you got to really, an experimentation. So that's not easy to do that. But yeah, again, the point of the diet, the question was, if you're still going to be in a caloric deficit. Well, the definition of a caloric deficit is that the scale goes down. So for anybody who's losing weight or has lost weight on this protocol, they are technically in a caloric deficit. There's different ways to get to a caloric deficit, and that's the fucking cool part. In this case, we're getting to a caloric deficit by raising your metabolism. So if you normally are a 2,000 calorie a day dieter, you might potentially now be closer to 3,000. But like you won't know that until you start getting the hang of this. And yes, giving you fruit is boxing up your calories so you can't go too crazy with just consuming like a disgusting amount of calories. So hopefully that's helpful. And there are people that we do suggest add sugar to stuff. There are people that we suggest them to actually eat candy because we don't want them to be in an intentional caloric deficit. So that's the way I'm viewing this. That's the way I've been viewing it from the beginning. This could be an unintentional caloric deficit.
Vic says, so 2 questions. Why are we not counting any calories? And 2, what's the eating window?
You're not counting calories because I'm going to fucking make fun of you. And I'm going to call you a calorie counting cunt. And I'm going to send you a t-shirt. It's going to be an invisible t-shirt. That'll come in an invisible box. And it'll be at your doorstep later today. So make sure you look for that. I just don't love the idea of counting calories. And I just talked a little bit about, food choices. My buddy, Jeff Powers, he is counting calories. There's a bunch of other people counting calories and they're having tons of success. So to each their own, go ahead and count your calories if you really feel like you have to. I'm just trying to liberate people away from it. Like, I just don't think you need to do it. There's some people who've been tracking their calories for 20, 30 years and they love doing it. But I know a lot of people that track their calories and they don't look very good. Like they're not in very good shape. So I'm always like, what the fuck's this guy doing? We have a lot of people come on our show, and Enzima doesn't count as calories either. And Enzima and I look better than those guys will ever look. So we're like, well, why? Again, it's just a bias of mine. Maybe it's a blind spot of mine, but I don't love the idea of counting calories. What was the second part of that question?
Second part of the question was, what's the eating window?
Oh yeah, you don't really have to have much of an eating window. You could intermittent it if you wanted to. You can one meal a day. And I guess I don't think I would advise you to one. Here's the thing that's important is like, you don't want to like fucking sledgehammer this thing down so hard, like it's going to be difficult enough. So let's not be a gremlin about it and have too many rules. We already have enough rules as it is. We got the 6 foods that we're dealing with and the combinations thereof. It's like, let's not worry about if we're eating after midnight and if it's dark or light out and so on. But if you really do care a lot about, having the fastest results, a lot of the fastest results would come from loading a lot of calories in the morning and having the calories diminish as the day goes on. And then just ended up with some really awesome weigh-ins in the morning, every morning. But it's like, who the fuck wants to do that? When my wife cooks something at home or, we have something going on at the house and something smells really good. It's like, I whip up a smoothie right then and there. I see my kids eating and we're watching TV or something like that. I grab some fruit, kind of like your dog, anybody has a family dog, your dog goes and grabs their little chew thing and sits next to you on the couch while you're watching TV, or they go find their little snack thing or whatever. Right. And we're the same. And so there's really not a reason, I don't think, to have an eating window. I think in terms of health, it's a good idea to eat X amount of times a day, 3 times a day, 5 times a day. Cole often says 3 squares. I think that's reasonable, but like 3 squares and like 2 snacks, right? Like, why not eat like 4 or 5 times? I don't think, if you do this diet for a while, even if you follow the advice from Durian Ryder or Freely, the banana girl, they're eating more starches and stuff like that. And they're doing that throughout the day. I think that if you were to do that for a long period of time, I think that you would lose tremendous amounts of weight as well. It's just that at first it might not be so great. And that could be that could be kind of annoying. That could be like detrimental for some people. Some people are going to want to see results way faster than that, right?
Okay, Duck Blind wants to know if gelatin will negatively impact FGF21 and sugar fasting.
Gelatin and collagen aren't supposed to have a negative impact there because they are absent of isoleucine. Not leucine, but isoleucine. So what's been suggested and recommended by Joe English, and I keep telling everyone to go check out his book, Fueled to Thrive. He talks about post-workout collagen with leucine. Not isoleucine, but straight leucine. The problem is that leucine, it tastes like really gross. So it's kind of hard to figure out how to get leucine into your schedule. It's an amino acid and it tastes funky. But a lot of the original studies on protein muscle synthesis, which I think some of that is like, it hasn't been proven to be wrong by any means, but I think they felt like most of the protein muscle synthesis came from leucine, most of the impact. And I think they fed people like 2 grams of leucine X amount of times a day. Dr. Gabrielle Lyon and Dr. Lane Norton, they both had the same mentor, and their mentor was someone that studied protein very thoroughly and knew all about the different amino acids. I believe that Lane Norton's PhD was in like EAAs. I think I think that was like, I don't know how PhDs work or whatever, but I think that was like a paper that he did or something along those lines. So like there's people out there that know a lot about this when it comes to like leucine and protein muscle synthesis and the it's all the different benefits that you can get from it. So that's a possibility to do that. And again, I continually recommend and point people to, it's totally free. Ryan made some really good charts of me talking about the Smelly diet. I think actually maybe when we post it, Ryan, I think that we should maybe do like a voiceover to it of those different tracks. And I can explain more stuff in there. I think that would be really neat. But, you know, I just been putting this out there because people are looking for like a protocol. And I actually think that it's healthy and a good idea to break the sugar fast. Now, for some people, like they might want to only break it like once a week or every other week or something like that. And that's totally fine. But I gave people suggestions on Smelly Protocol 1.5, Smelly Protocol 2.5, where you're breaking it like every other day, and then or you're also breaking it like every 2 days. And the reason for that is like I still want to hold on to muscle mass. You know, and SEMA and some other people are like, oh, well, you don't really care about losing muscle. It's like, no. I don't want to lose any muscle. Like, I don't have striated glutes. My quads aren't striated yet. So like I still have more weight to lose. I could probably get striated quads by just, you know, having a shift in water balance or water weight. But I still have fat to lose. I don't have a lot of fat to lose, but if I was to guess, I think that I could still lose another 10 pounds and still be fairly comfortable. So yeah, Ryan found the Smelly Protocol, and you can see on the weekend, so midweek, basically Wednesday, day 3, I labeled it with days rather than like days of the week on purpose so that you can utilize this in whatever way makes sense for you. You know, if you have like less work to do on like a Thursday or something, then maybe just, you know, bump that, you know, 3rd day down to the 4th day. You know what I'm saying? Like just mix and match it whatever way you want. These days don't matter that much. But I designed this way on purpose because Wednesday is hump day, and you get a little extra energy in on that day. So you have sugar fast, Monday, Tuesday, and then Wednesday. Once you made it through the entire day, you're going to go sugar fast by day and then meat and starch by night. How much meat? You know, you want that meat to be lean. I suggest that people keep their fats under 30, but if you've been following this for a while and your fats have been low, then you can start to bump them up a little higher, start to bump them up to 50. The less frequently that you have protein, the more you can increase the fat of that protein. So if you only have protein like once a week, then you can actually just, you know, bring up the overall amount of fat calories. But I'm telling people usually to have under, you know, between 30 to maybe 50 on the high end of grams of fat on these days. And then also approximately half your body weight in protein is fairly, you know, appropriate. I'm going, so you can do half your body weight all the way up to a full gram if you want to. And so I have kind of settled into doing about 150 to 200 because I'm only having the feedings of protein like 2 or 3 times a week. So then you see, as we go through the rest of it, you got day 4 and day 5 are also sugar fast. And then here's the weekend. So the weekend is a little different. You just sugar fast in the morning, you know, just to get something in before a workout. Go hammer a hard workout, and then go ahead and get your lean protein, your starch in, and then you just basically do the exact same thing the next day. So that's the way you kind of handle those weekends. So a lot of people don't work on the weekend. So you know, you can get in a good lifting session in on Wednesday. That's maybe more intense than some of the others. And Saturday, Sunday, you can smash the shit out of yourself because you're going to have the protein and everything else. And basically on Sunday, I said, even if you want to have something like a cheat, something slightly off plan, go ahead and do so, but just make sure it doesn't turn into a binge. You know, do your best to make, like, don't have it be something that you have to suffer the ramifications of where you barely work off the weight by like Wednesday, right? Like, let's have it be manageable. And you'll be surprised, your weight will shift quite a bit. And if your weight is shifting quite a bit and you're pissed about it, even when you are kind of staying on plan and on point, then back it off a little bit. Like back off the starches a little bit. It's okay. It's okay to have fun. It's okay to celebrate. It's okay to like, dive into these starches and to eat a lot of meat on these days. But the rebound, there could be a rebound. And so be aware of that. You could go up 6 pounds, 8 pounds, 10 pounds. And so there's other versions of this. There's Smelly Protocol 1.5, which is where you're just doing something very similar every other day. For those of you that are concerned about, weight gain of any kind and concerned about like this, they want to have the weight continue to trend downward, almost like no matter what, then obviously you can straight sugar fast. That's going to be your best and guaranteed weight loss. But you can also on the weekend, just not eat the starches, or eat less of the starches. So those are all options. Just having like vegetables or something with your meal. It's just that I'm trying to take advantage of post-workout window. So those of you who have questions about dates and bananas and stuff like that, those are going to be best placed post-workout because they do have starches in them. But like potatoes and rice and some of these other things, those are all best positioned after a workout as well. Something of note is that starches do not break up the party of FGF21. So you can have them at any time of day, really, if you wanted to. But one of the reasons they're not in there is because they seem to just slow down progress. They seem to slow down weight loss. So if you're concerned about, holding on to muscle and being jacked and not, getting you're still getting a lot of insulin flowing through the system pretty good with all the fruit juice, honey, maple syrup, all that stuff, because it's not all just stuff that just goes right to the liver. It's stuff that will still encourage your body to become more insulin sensitive. But the starches can really have a huge benefit too. And that's probably why the rice diet became a thing years ago and was utilized to assist people with type 2 diabetes. And I think that's really probably the most fascinating thing. Like, it would be really cool to like get a lot of diabetics to give this diet a chance, give this diet a protocol, or give this protocol a shot, because like for most people, it's like not that unsafe, as crazy as that sounds. It's not that unsafe for them to eat some carbohydrate, because there's a lot of people that are diabetic that still are very addicted to food. And rather than just like get rid of the foods that they love, and rather than like diving in on that, they instead just will take a shot of insulin. So anybody that's going to try to move into some sugar fasting, they would just do the similar normal stuff that they would normally do when they have carbohydrate. Like, what do you normally do when you have a piece of cake? What do you normally do when you have a couple slices of pizza? Except for in this case, your blood sugar should move around quite differently, because mainly just because you're eating fruit and fruit juice, and that's going to have a different impact on your blood sugar than eating a cake, because a cake has fat in it as well. And so again, the lipids are actually very problematic towards insulin. Your insulin, the fats are very detrimental for insulin resistance over time, especially when in abundance.
Elliot Rolfe says, did the diet strict for 3 days, but felt like trash, super dehydrated, and massive headaches. What do you do for electrolytes, please?
That's really interesting. You are loading your electrolytes from a different side. You're loading it from the potassium side. Potassium can sometimes increase heart rate. And when you have fluctuations of electrolytes, that's probably one of the first things that happens. Ways to avoid headaches and just kind of feeling like shit is sunlight and water. Sunlight, water, and salt. Sunlight, water, and salt. I have friends that get like really bad headaches, and I'll tell them all the time, get outside, get your sunglasses off, and get in the sun. And it doesn't always, completely help or cure everybody all the time right away. But over time, that will really help. Getting your eyes sensitized to the sunlight can really be really helpful. You guys got to understand, anytime you try any new diet, like this happens with keto, right? This is not new. People try keto and they end up with, like, they call it keto flu. And the keto flu is actually just a change and a shift in your electrolytes, and has nothing to do with ketones. You know, people always thought it was like, oh, the ketones are flooding in and it makes me feel weird or whatever, or it's just the fat. And it really seems like the culprit is actually your electrolytes. So your electrolyte balance is going to be thrown off a little bit. And just, pay attention. What did you do? What did you eat? What did you do? Maybe just have a little journal, and just write stuff down. There's a lot of reasons why you could feel like shit. You could be under eating. You could be overdoing it. You could be just having too many carbs at one time. It seems like the same things that we run into with training are the same things we run into with food sometimes. So frequency is a huge one. Duration is another huge one. So meal frequency is a big part of it. Like, how often are you eating? Like, if you just ate and then you ate again, that could cause some problems. The intensity, the intensity here would be how dense is your food? There's a big difference between food volume and food density. And I think it's a good idea on this diet to kind of go back and forth and get a good variety of density and volume. Volume in this case, when we're talking about food, is like larger amounts of food with less calories, like a watermelon. Blueberries are very low in calories. Strawberries. If you take a big old thing of frozen strawberries and throw it in a blender, it's going to be like, I don't know, 200 calories or something like that. It's just not that many calories, and it blends down in something smaller, obviously. But you can dump some water or some ice or some fruit juice in there, and you have a shake that's it's like 400 calories or something like that. But we still need to be paying attention to what's the overall amount of sugar that you're hitting with that meal, because that can make you feel like crap. I'm glad you're doing it, and I'm glad you're sticking to it. So you could add some salt to your fruit. Might be a good idea. But yeah, just do your best to try to stick with it, and see if you can make improvements on how you feel over the next couple days.